Hi, Miriam. Welcome. This is a section we're talking about is community engagement, and I thought you were the perfect person to talk to. Um, can I introduce Miriam Simpson of Sweet Homes London? I think the first question really is, could you tell people about your business?
Well, yeah, Sweet Homes London. I started as, well, I'm a property agent essentially. Originally, when I started, I wanted to refurb people's homes. I wanted to make them more homely, if you like. So when I first started the biz and also for lettings, but I had probably been out of like lettings for, I think at that point, maybe 7 or 8 years. So the market had changed quite a bit. So when I initially started, I wasn't making as much money as I'd like to. I wasn't really getting many clients on, so it was really difficult. But as I, went more and more into property, I discovered some different kind of strategies, some new techniques that people were using to make money. And eventually I came across something called rent to rent or guaranteed rent, which is essentially a strategy that you can use to take control of a property and make money from that property. But yeah, so it took me a little while to start, but I was obviously, that was, I can't remember, 2018.
2018, you launched it.
2018, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
incorporate, yeah, the beginning of.
you launched it in April, and actually it brings me on to sort of the first question. Is one of the things that we try and say to people. It's really good to be looking for me to be looking who might be able to support, and we often look at saying, well, maybe friends and families can be doing that, but that can actually bring certain problems if your friends and families aren't always on the same message as you. Can you tell people a little bit about your experience there?
Well, I did try and bring. I've had quite a few different experiences with friends and family, and as much as they may mean well, and as much as it might seem like a good idea at the time, and I'm not saying that you. Yes, some friends and family support is important. I think for motivation for yourself as a business owner or as a company director, it is important to have family to stay motivated. But now, learning, through the experience that I've had, I would probably want to avoid involving friends and family as much as I did before, because you know personal relationship doesn't always work out. People either, from my experience, I've had a lot of jealousy. Probably I've had a lot of kind of, mainly from family concern, or a lot of cautiousness, or worry about the risk that I'm taking, as in they were more scared of going into the business than I was. And I think if I had listened to some of the advice of some of my family, I literally probably wouldn't have a business at all, because it is a scary thing to do, to start a business. It is a you know a considerable task to take on, and it doesn't always work out. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue what you want to do. So
I've
yeah.
always thought the beauty for the relationship between ourselves is the fact that I can sometimes be a sounding board. I sometimes can be your critic, and sometimes I can be a person who would be the devil's advocate with you. But I think one of the beauties is the fact is that I think if you're going to help someone, you've got to actually let the person who's the entrepreneur realize their own risk, not walk them into a risk, but make them realize that. And I think that's the difficulty. And I think you don't always have to be professional, but you need to be allow the person to voice their views so that they can make the business grow. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've been good, really good with me. But I think it's definitely an idea to, you can definitely discuss the risk, explore the risk even, and this is where I guess because you can take calculated risks as well. Calculated risks, some risks are more worth taking than other risks. What is the benefit if this risk works out? What are the negatives if this risk doesn't work out? What are are there legal implications, which there are often in property? There are legal implications. What are the financial implications? All of these things, you can explore, but you're right. Ultimately, it is the business owner's decision to make, or the entrepreneur's decision to make, as to whether I do or do not take that risk.
And I think from my point of view is we have a thing where we look at trying to sort of define the gaps, and it's much more complicated than if you just sort of supporting someone into a job, because the gaps sometimes aren't always obvious, and it takes a while. I remember once you said to me, we had a conversation, I think it was in the town hall, where in a way you actually wanted me to be, you described it almost like a professional nag, the person who was actually going to you were the person who was actually, I was the person who was going to tell you, make sure you do this, make sure you get this. And that was because of your disability. Sometimes your memory, you forget things, and that's important. So I think it's important that I know those gaps and how can I help. And has that helped in the past?
Yeah, it definitely has helped in the past. It definitely still even helped me now. I think you even suggested technology, like suggesting Alexa, who I can speak to manage my diary, although I still forget sometimes. But yeah, different technological supports, different techniques that I can use to try and, combat the difficulties, because, my condition is never going to go away. There's no cure, but neither is the business. I'm not trying to I can't get rid of the condition, so I just have to find different ways of working to deal with it. But even when you said about communicating that to some of my business associates and my clients, so in order to set an expectation to say that I'm not being unprofessional if I forget something, I'm not being unprofessional if I don't get things exactly right, or if I've misunderstood something. This is the reason. Because for a long time I thought I don't want them to question my ability, or to question my the integrity of my company.
I think that's sometimes useful if you've got a support person. You can say, and you can be 100% honest with me, where sometimes you might not be able to do that actually in the business world. And I think that is something that is, I'd imagine, quite valuable, just being to be you, to be able to be you when you're talking to me, and knowing that I'm not going to turn around to any of your people, your colleagues or anyone else, and tell them about that. Is something that you can talk through with me, which I'm sure, to me, I think should be of an advantage. But I'm not the recipient of that.
No, it is definitely, because I think for a little while I thought, oh, gosh, everything was in my own head, and I spent so long trying to, or even now sometimes I still, to a certain degree, I can't let everyone know about my condition. I can't always lead with that. Definitely, it's not always appropriate. But I still, it has been really good to be able to come back to you and discuss different things, because otherwise I've just got this stuff going round and round in my head. I'm getting stressed out. Or at one point I think I was just getting stressed out and making the same mistakes. And, it can be quite, it can grind you down. It can be quite demeaning after a while, and I started even second guessing myself, saying, am I good enough to do this? Should I, I'm disabled, inverted commas. Why would I even bother to start a business if I'm disabled?
I remember having that conversation of saying that there won't be a chief executive in the country that will not sometimes doubt themselves and say, why am I here? What we call imposter syndrome. Why am I doing this? And I think sometimes that does help when you've got some reinforcement that actually some of those feelings is not abnormal. It's actually quite normal. And only the sort of people lying to themselves would be in that situation of saying, no, I'm brilliant at everything. And I think that's quite useful to say, is I'm actually not managing. Actually, a lot of people aren't managing all the time. I think that sort of brings me on to that area of what I call the support. There's two sides of the support. If for my side, there's a support for your business, and I'm going to go back to when you actually launched your business. We had what I would call a disagreement, in the sense that I didn't think it was very important for you to have a very big party and a very big launch, and I thought you could have a soft launch, and you were very adamant that this was going to be the biggest launch out, and I have to say, it was a tremendous launch, and I, number one, for the enterprise, once you decided that, I was fully 100% behind to make sure it was going to be a success. Even if I had the misgivings about that, it was important for me to actually be on your side. And it was a great one. And I think one of the things I want to be saying is, I don't think this is a black and white issue. This is a grey area issue. There isn't always a right and wrong, and it's opinions. And I think that's a bit about the relationship of being able to voice each other's opinions. But ultimately, you're the one in control, not me.
Yeah. I think that thing about the launch was, I think it was, for me, you know, even now, I think, should I have done it? Should I not have done it? But I think at the time, I made the decision to do it. And at the time, I felt like I needed to do it, not just for the business, but for me, I think there's a personal thing for me psychologically. I needed to launch my baby. And I think generally in life, and even like in the fact, you know, whenever anybody has a child, you christen the baby, there's a big party, and, you know, you're kind of giving this child, but, you know, this kind of grand welcoming. So it was probably a little bit cultural, a little bit more personal, but I felt like, yeah, I needed to do it, and I was glad I did it.
and then immediately after that, you went to
days later.
Days later, you went on holiday, and I thought, what is this woman doing? And she's had this launch, and then she's gone massively on holiday. And I was thinking, what chance have we got here? But actually, it taught me a valuable lesson, and that was about the fact that you needed support for yourself, and actually you recognise that in doing everything, you were in danger of burning yourself out, and you needed a break. And actually, when you came back, boy, did you work. You actually made up for it. But again, you know, it was that lesson for me is, yes, entrepreneurs do things in a different way. They're wired differently, but we've got to actually work on how we're actually going to support that.
Yeah. No, I think, again, you know, I thought that I was going a bit crazy at the time. I thought, gosh, you know, I think I did the launch on the Wednesday, and I flew out on the Friday, and yeah, everybody thought that I was going crazy, my family too, and but I was so stressed out at the time. I felt like if I don't fly away, I'm going to end up, you know, literally, I'm going to end up going crazy. I just needed to clear my head, and just clear my head so that I was able to pursue the business, so that I was able to continue to work and really focus, because my head was not, but my mental health, I felt like at the time, was in jeopardy. And
yeah, and I think that it's important to realise everyone is wired differently. One thing I have realised is working with all these entrepreneurs, is all of you work in very, very different ways, but there's not one way of working. And I think that's the beauty of this, is entrepreneurs are different for a reason. They see sometimes they realise there's a need for something, and you were very much like that. I sort of want to go on about that, because your business when you started was really described as almost like a bespoke property business, and it was semi-going. It was sort of slow. You were building up the contacts, but it wasn't as good as you want. And then you came back, and you turned around to me and you said to me, "Do you know, I think I'm going to do something really different, and it's called rent to rent." And I had zero idea what rent to rent was. I wasn't even sure how moral this was, but actually, I now realise actually it's really very okay, and it's something
Yeah.
that is very normal in the property market. But it was that type of sort of, again, it's how am I going to proactively support something I'd never heard of? But it's also how is that going to work? And you know, can you talk through your process about how you got to that rent to rent?
I mean, obviously, networking in property or in business in general, I guess you have to network. And I had come across the strategy through networking, and because I was still trying to learn. Well, it's constant learning in property anyway, but I was still trying to learn about different strategies, different opportunities to make more money, and constantly trying to promote the business. And it was through I think a networking session that or a couple of networking sessions, I'd come across this thing called rent to rent, and I was just hearing that all of these people were making this money from it, and I just thought, gosh, this, why am I not making money? All of these people are making money from this. And when I understood the concept, I thought, well, I'm doing half of this stuff all the time anyway. I could and should be taking advantage of this right now. And thank God it really worked for me. It really, and I then began to slowly focus on that because of the returns that I was getting on it. And
and that's when I realised I could help a bit, in the sense of having a conversation about this, and you were explaining to me, and I started asking what I thought were the really simple questions. So I was saying, which is the most successful property? Is it property A, or is it property B, or is it property C? And you looked at me as if to say, what is he talking about? And I said, well, which one brings you the most money in? And then you suddenly realise, well, I'm not so sure. And then that's when I realised, yes, that's when I can be important, because I can be actually say, actually, it's really important to know what you're spending your money on, and why you're spending your money, and which is going to be. They're normal questions that I have. And of course, when you're a new business, you have to be an all-rounder. In my own business and my own charity, I have my finance director, who I rely on 100% for everything I do. And of course, in a way, you don't have that. So I become that person in a way that be able to ask those questions.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm definitely glad that you did ask those questions, because it changed exactly what you said. You have to be an all-rounder, which I hate accounting. I hate it, but it's absolutely necessary. I have to, there's no way of getting around it. So now that definitely changed the way that I work from then, and has changed the way that I work going forward. So not just keeping the accounts up to date or the cash flow up to date, not just that stuff, but even knowing where my money is going and what's costing me and what's not costing me. The way that I work now is different because of that. I understand how much each property is costing me as a daily rate. Like literally the rent, all of the over. I understand. I can break it down to I could probably even break it down hourly if I wanted to now, which I couldn't in the beginning. I couldn't before.
And I think this is true. I was speaking to Jennifer Hippolyte of Beyond Expectations, and she'd started her own wedding planning business, and I'd asked her why she was getting involved in mentoring people like yourself. And one of the things she said very clearly is that entrepreneurs make mistakes, but when they make mistakes, it usually costs them money. And that resonated with me for you, because you've had to make mistakes, because it's the way you've had to be learning, and sometimes there's no getting aside that. But when you do make mistakes, of course, it costs you money. So it's trying to minimize those, and I expect, from my point of view, doing it different. I would try and help you a bit more on sort of trying to get more of a business and analyzing of things. But I'm not sure how that would have worked with you, because I think part of it is you are very much a side of saying, yes, I'm a little bit ahead of you. And again, it's sort of how you can get business analyzing type to work is going to be the interesting part, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely in property that I know that there are quite a few people. Yeah, I've had some more training in different things, and I still train to this day. But I think and quite a few people that I know have paid for mentoring, specifically concerning property and property deals to in a way do exactly what you're saying, to analyze, to act as an analyst, I guess, in weighing up the decisions that you're making, and again the risks that you're taking. But I think for some of these mentors, they cost quite a lot of money.
which is which is why we ended up I did manage to pay you up with a mentor with
Yeah,
Matt, who
yeah,
you spent some time with, and
yeah,
even though the business is not quite the same, it was impossible for me to get you a property
yeah, yeah,
person. Have you found that useful to have someone who
yeah.
owns his own business to talk to?
Definitely, definitely, yeah. Because exactly what you said, exactly what you explained. He's already been there. He's already um, been through an experience that I'm just kind of getting started in, and he's got a much more established business. So he will have already made decisions that have cost or made money, and is definitely in a good position, or has been advising me and challenging me on thinking about how I'm structuring my business and how I'm moving forward, and to make sure that I'm, because I think for me the difficulty is because I have memory issues, cognitive issues, decision making is an issue. Which is, I guess,
Yeah.
absolutely essential in business. It is an issue, and can be what seems like a very simple thing, um, can be quite complex for me. Yeah. So when and I guess there's times where I have to work under pressure as well, but then sometimes I still need to step back and not rush myself and make a decision that's a bad decision that's going to cost me money. So I'm really, really, I have scaled back the business quite a lot, because there's no point in, having lots of money coming in, but you're also you've got lots of money going out.
Yeah, it was that bit about cash flow I was talking to you
Yeah,
about that time.
exactly. Yeah. So I scaled back. I can't remember how many properties I've gone through now. Like 7 properties. Now I'm down to 2, which to some people might seem like, oh my gosh, it's alarming. Yes, it is. In terms financially, it's a huge, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stay at 2, and it just means that I've had to step back, reassess what I'm doing on the business, because I've actually started a second business as well now. So scaling back the business was, both businesses will work together anyway. Going forward, they are working together, but scaling back the business was so that I could focus and move into the right direction, I believe, and move into a more profitable way of doing business.
Well, I think there's a word and that's used a lot with this COVID. The businesses that will succeed are the ones that can pivot, the ones that can change directions a bit. And it's
Yeah.
sort of, I'm very against sort of too much management speak, but you've got to be flexible. The one thing I've learned in just running a charity is that if I'm not flexible, it's impossible. But I must keep my basic values and my basic support. And I think that's the thing that has always got me with you is your basic values. Once you explain rent to rent was, no, this is not a cheap thing for people. Actually, people get a really good property when they're with me. Then actually your values have remained constant. That actually your property company is about giving a good experience to both the person who you're renting from to actually make the property, but also to the people who are renting your property. It's a bit better than any other place, and that's so important. Is your values shine through?
Yeah, it's definitely important to me that my beliefs are, and that people hate when I say this, or definitely my family hate, but that I want to give a good service to both my tenants and my landlords. I want to make sure that that you know, we have a good reputation, a strong reputation, and that, you know, people's, because I believe in home as like a base. I believe in home even as like a kind of foundation for your mental health, or, you know, even if you want to refer to it as refer to it as like as in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of the basic needs is like your home, like the roof over your head, and I believe that your home kind of helps you to sets you in good stead to be able to deal with the rest of the madness that's going on in the world. You know, it's tough enough on a day-to-day outside, without, you know, your home is kind of your refuge and your foundation that allows you to be able to deal with stuff outside. So that is, you know, the heart of the business is to make sure, it's kind of like home is where your heart is, so that yeah, so it should be
I think your values, to me, values in business is important, and it is something that is important to me, and I recognize it was important to you, and it was something that whenever we were having the conversations, I would always bring it back to, is that part of that values that you believe in, and because I think it is important to you, is that it's not just about being in business, it's actually making a difference is actually an important aspect for you.
Yeah, definitely, because I know what it's like to not have a home. I know what it's like to not feel secure in your home, and I know what it's, you know, I've been through many kind of housing scenarios, and yeah, I know that every scenario has affected not just my mental health but my physical health. So it's something that I believe can make or break you. It's, you know, it's not, it's a lot more than we kind of give credit to. And I think especially now coming out of this kind of COVID kind of lockdown time, people more than ever should know how happy they are or unhappy they are with their homes, because they've had to spend day in, day out in our homes at the moment. But yeah, and I even now, you know, I've moved in the time that, I think before I did the launch and before I flew out to Jamaica, I'd also moved house like a couple of weeks before. And you know, I was saying to a friend recently, if I'd still been in the flat that I was in before, I think it would have, you know, really kind of devastated me, being locked down in a flat as opposed to being locked down in a much bigger house with gardens that I can, you know, I can go out in the front or back garden. So it's a huge difference. Yeah, so I'm just very grateful for my home.
And the final thing I wanted to go on to is that bit about letting go, and the reality is if it's successful like it has been with me and you, or is that it's not about letting go. I described it to someone, it's really one business owner talking to another business owner. It's one person on, and I see you now as a peer as opposed to,
oh, thank you,
you know, rather than a candidate support worker. It's something where sometimes it's just sort of, do you want to have a coffee so we can talk about each other's businesses, and that's good in a way. I think it's sort of, yes, it doesn't have to happen, but you know, if there are some things that you want to have a conversation with, you just need to pick up the phone or the email, and you know, then you can get hold of me, and vice versa. I remember contacting you early on in the COVID time and just finding out how you were, and it wasn't anything more than, well, how are you doing? You know, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I am so grateful, you know, for you, Robert, you know, for the course that you guys put on, because I know, even though, like I said previously, I have a HNC in business, you know, I'm educated, but that nowhere near prepared me to start my own business or start me on the, you know, the journey to being an entrepreneur. That wasn't anywhere near enough. Because it's not just the course, it's not just yourself, also the other my other peers now that were on the course were invaluable to even witness and be around other people who have disabilities. Was beyond encouraging, and what it did for my my vision, for my motivation, is I don't think I could put a price on it, because I thought even like Lucy, Sandra, Marcus, you know, we've all got our difficulties. I hate to call it disability. All got our difficulties, some visible, some invisible, but we're still here. You know, we're not just still here. Actually, we're still in business. We're still, you know, we're still doing the
And
impossible.
that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes surviving, and certainly at the minute,
Yeah.
surviving is a good thing. Finally, can you just sort of remind, because we'll put at the end of your actual website and so that people can visit your website.
Yeah. So my company is called Sweet Homes London Limited. So it's www.sweethomesLondon.com. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. And I've just started, my new business is actually called Marla Supported Living Services. So I'm also on, you know, a website. I'm on Facebook as well. So we're on there as Marla Support. The website is www.marlasupport.com. So I'm actually, the new business is actually looking to support in a residential setting vulnerable young adults. So looking to support vulnerable young adults towards living independently.
I think it's a fantastic project as well. Really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm
and
really
hopefully
excited.
we can talk about it in a year's time.
Yes, yeah. So watch this space now.
Yeah. Miriam,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Thank you.